Okay, so to your bread, you are going to add 1 teaspoon of yeast mixed with warm water. I usually use, if I'm mixing on the same day, the same one that I used for my... So I stir it up a little bit, and it's going to get a little foamy. And you let it just sit aside for a little bit. Little buggers want to stick to the teaspoon. Okay, and I set that aside while I mix in my other ingredients. To this, we are going to add 2 tablespoons of oil, and I always do the oil first so that everything else doesn't stick to the spoon. Again, keep in mind here that I'm doing a double batch, so I'm adding a little extra. 2 teaspoons salt. And 4 teaspoons sugar. And you can go a little heavy on the sugar because what the sugar actually does is it gives the yeast something to eat, which makes it expel gases and which makes the bread get those holes and airy and everything in it. So after that, I do a little bit of mixing to get all of those ingredients sorted out. While this is mixing, I add my yeast in. And you're going to need to scrape that a little bit because the yeast likes to stick to the bottom of the measuring cup. Don't want to waste any of it, especially the way it is right now to get it. So I'm looking into videos on how to make it, and I think you could actually make it out of potato water. Sourdough is actually quite popular because they say you don't even really need yeast, but I've always added it, so I'll experiment with not adding any yeast in the future, but for right now, I don't want to mess up this batch. Okay, to this, while you are stirring it, you want to add 3 cups of flour. And I add it slowly. Do not turn your KitchenAid up to high because all that loose stuff on the top will explode at you and it's not fun to clean up. But just move it up slowly. I usually add about a cup at a time, scraping down the sides so that you can see what the consistency is like. You're basically trying to get this to feel like a real dough. If you've ever handled any kind of bread dough or pizza dough, you'll see what we're talking about later on when this one is complete. I'm going to add my flour and restart the video when it's just about the right consistency because this part can take a little bit of time. I am about halfway through mixing my dough, and I wanted to let you guys know that as I add my flour, I have it going a little bit faster so you might see how it goes up the side. I wanted to show you the consistency of the dough and how it's starting to stick to the dough hook. Now see how it's puffing up along the sides there? What I like to do is add a little bit of my warm water back in, and sometimes it throws water up at me, but if you're really concerned about making a mess, well, bread's going to be a mess one way or another, so anytime you work with flour, you just start with a clean counter, end with a dirty counter, and clean it dry before you clean it wet. See how it's starting to get nubs and then it's shaggy around the outside. Okay, so this I had kneading for quite a while. I actually kind of walked away and let it do its thing. As you can see, there's large, long strings in it. It feels glutinous and stringy. That's basically what you want because I guess the gluten is formed. It helps when the water's in there because it incorporates the flour a little bit better. But see how it's almost, can almost see through it when you pull thin sheets of it off. And I'll put this up, and now I'm going to split my dough in half because again I'm doing I'm doing a double batch, but I'm going to show you guys. This will usually fit in like a large Pyrex bowl. I sprayed the inside with a little bit of canola oil, not a lot though. You don't want to smother the dough in the oil because it'll block air from getting in and kill that precious bacteria and yeast and all that jazz. But do use a very big bowl because it's not really fun when it overflows in your oven or on your proofing station.
How you doing?
So most of the time I'll just proof right inside of my KitchenAid, but this is going to overflow the sides of it quite a bit. So I'm just moving it moving it onto the counter, and then I'm going to move it into the Pyrex jars. See the pull that dough has? If you are taking it out of the KitchenAid, which I'm going to take it right out of the KitchenAid this time, make sure you rinse your dough hook and everything, because once dough dries out, it's very difficult to get it cleaned off things. So you're better off cleaning off with extremely hot water so that you don't have that problem later on. So I'll take some flour on my hands. I've got flour on my surface here, and you don't need to do too much here because you've already you've kneaded it in the KitchenAid. I should have my dough, I believe they call it a lathe, it's like a scraper that you use, on me, but I don't have it up here at the moment, so I'm just using a knife, and hopefully I like to fold it in under itself, and then I drop it in. Could have used a little more flour on my hands. Let me grab that. I like to drop it into my bowl, get it to make a nice little circle of dough, which isn't really too big a deal because you're going to be shaping it again anyway. So we do this. Sticky stuff. I usually like to have plastic wrap just for this so I don't have to go in my hands. Oh, give it a very light spray of olive oil so that when it rises and it hits the plastic wrap, it doesn't stick to it. Or the towel, whichever you choose to use. Now you're going to take this after you have it fully covered and put it in an oven that you have set to warm. Set it to warm when you start this process, and then turn it off when you put the dough in. Set your timer for 1 hour or until the dough doubles in size, but usually an hour does it for me.